Aloha Hawaii, this is Pokalai Nui. I am your host for this program, Hawaiian Potpourri. We are produced by the Hawaiian National Broadcast Corporation. The opinions expressed in this program are not necessarily those of the staff and management of this radio station or of the Hawaiian National Broadcast Corporation. We broadcast on radio station KWAI 1080 on your AM dial. Today is Saturday, the 29th day of April in the year 2012. If you're hearing this at any other time or date, we're pre-recorded. We've been recorded and we're showing it at that time. And I tell you that because we do have many of our programs now on the web, and if you went to your internet server and Googled Pokalai Nui Hawaiian Perspectives, and I believe you'll come up with some of our radio shows on television, not on television, on the internet. We are also on Olelo television, let's see, on Thursdays at 8 o'clock, I believe, and Monday mornings at 10 in the morning on Channel 54. I believe it's at Channel 54. However, those programs are a little bit dated because we don't have as many opportunities to show our programs as we would like to. We produce we produce 8 programs per weekend, and we can only submit 2 programs to Olelo per month. Therefore, what you're getting is some of the recycled and older shows on the Olelo channel, and that title is A Second Glance. That's my television show title, A Second Glance. We've talked about therapeutic foster homes, and if you would like to be a parent for a therapeutic foster home in the Waianae area, going as far as Makakilo, give us a call. Our telephone number is 696-4211. Asked to speak with Maile Ohira is the head of that program, and we'll begin training and give you an opportunity to see if that is an appropriate role for you, your family, to take in a child who is having some difficulties, challenges, and in need of a home that is appropriate for that child. Okay, telephone number is 696-4211. The name of the organization is Hale Na'au Pono. We are also known as Waianae Coast Community Mental Health Center. Next thing I want to say is that I've received an email from a friend who is now living in France, and she had seen the one of our shows previously, and this spoke about Hawaiian homelessness and the criminalization of homelessness. So she writes back, and she has the following comments to make. She says, "Don't you think that if the issue could be politicized, it would leap out of criminalization?" Before that, she says, I just listened, among others, to the potpourri about Hawaiian homeless and the criminalization of homelessness. And so then she comes in with that other statement. She continues, "Can homeless fly banners when they go to sleep? Can their tents or shelters become billboards for political statements? We recently saw this here in France. Every winter, homeless, with the support of social associations, set up tents along a well-known riverbank in Paris. Because it is so visual, it attracts the media, and when the police moves up or moves in to move them out, the press is there with their camera, etc. With some good staging, some articulate homeless are then interviewed, and it goes on evening news. They've been smart enough not to do it too often, but to pin such actions with current national events. For example, we had the famous Betancourt story, and then she talks about more the local or the French events in which the president gave this Mrs. Betancourt, one of the owners of L'Oreal, 84 million euros tax break. The organizers, or the organized homeless, started flying their banners denouncing such outrage that very same day. It made national news. And the police did not move in for a few days, and oh surprise, some shelters were suddenly opened and money was allowed. Not enough, but a start, and certainly a lurking embarrassment for the government. So, then this comes from Dominique, who's a viewer or listener of our Hawaiian Potpourri program. Quite an idea. What could you sort of tie homelessness to? Well, what about the millions of dollars going into rail and the penalties that are being paid? What about the penalty for the city polluting Mailiili stream up to $1.7 million, or I forget what the amount was, or other penalties where the federal government comes in and penalizes the state or the city, and flying these things and say this is what amount, what this penalty would have bought had it been used for the homeless, things like that. I think it's a very interesting idea, and some of it can be brought here to Hawaii. We'll see how it turns out. Well, anyway, that was one of the responses I had from one of our listeners. The second issue I wanted to raise is an activity that I was involved in during, when was that? On Wednesday, when the City Council held their City Council meeting at Kapolei. And one thing I must say is that, and I congratulate the City Council and its chairperson for having the patience to listen to the voices of its citizenry. Not only that, but when it came to certain issues such as GMO and whether or not it should be labeled, if any product is what is called genetically modified organisms, some people will also call it grossly mutated organisms, should the general public, the purchasing public, those people who are purchasing their food product, have noticed that GMO has affected this food product that you are buying. Many people talk about corn, they talk about sweeteners, they talk about many other things. Should the general public be informed? Now, people from different islands came to Oahu, and the City Council was very patient, and they listened to all of the different speakers express themselves. So to that, I congratulate the council members who were very respectful, to the chairperson who accorded respect and dignity to each of the speakers, and also to intervene and to, quote, protect the speakers in the event. And you can understand that there's a strong passion over these issues. So to the event that there were hecklers or there were people waving signs, which was more distracting than carrying a message, they were corrected and told to stand back and things like that. So I thought it was a very professionally done hearing. I don't like the outcome of the hearing. I thought the City Council members were wrong in their vote, but of course we're all, quote, entitled to our opinions. And so I respect them for that. At least they had, and my regard to this, what's her name, Tulsi Gabbard, City Council member who introduced the resolution to begin labeling food products with a GMO label, and especially, what's his name, Mr. Byrd, Berg, B-E-R-G, council member, who was a very strong and consistent advocate to have these items labeled. The rest of the council members, they were sort of hanging around, not really being committed. And then when the vote came, they voted against the resolution, except Breen Hiramoto, said that in the beginning he was against the labeling, but after hearing the testimony, he was sort of in favor of it. But when it came time to vote, he voted, I think he was against it with reservations, or was it for it with reservations? The underlying issue in that matter is the following. The scientists who march up and down the podium to testified that there is no scientific evidence to show that GMO has a negative effect or impact upon the consumer. So genetic modification of these things, don't worry about it. The consumers are safe. And that the only time you should label on your food product is if it will have an impact, if it's proven that it will have an impact on the consumer, or it alters the taste or the, the taste, and I think there was one or two other matters, then it should be reflected. And they said GMO products don't fall in this category, so it should not be labeled. And so fighting against the idea that, well, where's your scientific proof? You can't prove it, so why should we need to label it, was the other side. And the other side was essentially saying whether or not it has or has no effect, it's for the people themselves, the consumers themselves, to make up their mind. All we're saying is they are entitled to be informed. And at that point, they can decide whether or not they want to chance it, that it has or does not have a bad effect on the human consumer. The response to that is, well, then it's going to be too expensive and there's really no use for it. And there's a suggestion that if it's labeled, then it must be bad. Well, other people could say that if it's labeled, it must be good. So I didn't really buy into that argument, and I was more persuaded by the idea of information. Let the consumer decide by being so informed, because it is a very serious issue among at least some of the consumers. I'm concerned, and if I had a preference, if I had the knowledge in advance, I would tend to purchase things that was not GMO tainted. But how do you fight with an issue when you don't have the specialty knowledge that seems to be corralled among the scientific community? And it's the same for economics, when it seems economists or bankers tend to have the econometrics on their side simply because that is their specialty, and we as common people don't understand that specialty. And then they get into this idea of using terms and technologies and then elevating themselves as being sort of the elite because they went to these schools, they have these alphabets after their names and the rest, and sort of marginalizing the rest of us from that conversation. I was not going to testify, but seeing the marching up of these experts testifying, I decided that I would at least submit some opinion on the matter. My testimony dealt with the following: that I remember as a very young child living out in Lualuale Valley, the fog truck would come through Pu'uhulu Road and then throughout the valley, and they would spray a fog of DDT in the air to kill the mosquitoes. I think it was part of the Department of Health's program to kill off mosquitoes. And we as children and our parents were told that it has no bad effect on the human beings. Don't worry about it. It only will kill the mosquitoes. And we as children, this is, quite an event, living way out in the boondocks. At that time, country was really country. So when the trucks would come, we would end up chasing after the trucks and playing in the DDT spray. The manufacturers of DDT told us no effect on the human being. Later on, we discovered that either they were liars or they were ignorant of the impact on the human being. But at that point in time, they would come out and say, there's no evidence, there's no proof to it having a bad effect. And perhaps they didn't want to look and do the kinds of tests that should have been done because it would be against their self-interest. But that was in the past. Does it really happen today? So if we fast forward to not when I was a little kid, but when I was at the age of draft age. And for those of you who are not familiar with draft age, it's about 18 and up to about 25, 26, is that it? The Vietnam War was going on, and there was this thing within that war, and it was called the rainbow agents that they would use to merely defoliate the forest. And among these rainbow agents was what was called Agent Blue, as well as Agent Orange. And there were probably other colors of the rainbow that was used. But there was a very clear understanding. The American people were told, and I'm sure the Vietnamese stooges were told, don't worry about it, it only kills the plants. And so they took their planes, and many American service members used these bombs of this Agent Orange, and sprayed it over the forests of Vietnam under the information given out by its manufacturer, Monsanto, that we should not worry because it has no negative effect on the human being. Well, after the war, we understand that up to 500,000 people were either killed or badly injured, Vietnamese, by this Agent Orange. We have also found that thousands of U.S. military soldiers and airmen and others who were in country and were told to go through the areas after the defoliation had occurred, and now it's safe to walk through and take out the enemy. And they themselves were affected by Agent Orange. For decades, the U.S. military joined with Monsanto, both speaking out of self-interest, denying that there was any effect. There was no scientific evidence. And when you face the claim that there is no scientific evidence to an individual soldier who is suffering from a multitude of cancers, who is unable to challenge the overriding data or information or lack of information, how do you fight against that? You are left with having to depend on the truth-telling of the very party who is at interest in protecting their interest and denying the negative effects. So that's another example of, well, the scientist tells us there's no scientific evidence. Well, where have they looked? A more current example is with regards to cigarette smoking. and the denial for decades by the cigarette companies and their henchmen, including university researchers and others, who was saying there is no proof that there is any evidence or any effect on the human being to cause lung cancer or any other negative health effects. How often, how long, how many times should we be suckered into this belief when the scientists themselves are involved in an arena, even if they are not working for Monsanto, even if they are private individuals who are conducting scientific research, they still belong to the same crowd and the same peer groups. And they are still seeing products of other scientists who are employed by these companies, who are writing articles after articles after articles, and so they themselves become the mouthpieces of these scientists, who tries to convince us that there is no negative effect. On the other hand, people are saying, hey, you may be right, you may be wrong, but is it not appropriate that we at least know what GMO products are, so that we can determine for ourselves? You are entitled to your belief. Scientists are entitled to their beliefs. We are entitled to at least information so that we can form our beliefs as well. And I'm very sorry to report that the City Council, as a council with, I think, 7 out of 9 members, refrained from making this resolution or passing this resolution out of the city and county of Honolulu. If you know any of the council members, you may want to raise this subject to them and ask them, hey, how did you vote and why? It's not a question of the scientific evidence or the scientific proof, because if that was a question, then we would not be interested in protecting the public until there was this evidence, and until that time comes, let the public be at risk. I think we have entered into a new day. I think we have entered into a new time by which we say, if we elevate the concept of democracy, if we elevate the concept of your right to know, if we elevate the concept of informing people, let us not try to control either one way or the other way what the people will decide. Just give them the information, let them decide, let them go through, do their own research, go through the internet, go to the library or whatever it is. But force the companies producing these foods, who are already going through FDA, require that they disclose. It's not something that is new, has never happened before or anything like that. There are other counties, other cities, other countries that are requiring that this occur.
Kaulana na pua o Hawaii, Kupa ama hope o ka aina, Iki mai ka elele o ka loko ino, Pala pala anunu me ka paka. Pane mai Hawaii moku o ke ave, Koku ana honoa o Pilani, Ka ko'o mai kaua I o mano, Pa'apu me ke oni o ka kuhi hewa, sivila a o ke kana